Are you a health professional that struggles to sell their programs and services? Do you know you can help people but can't seem to get that message across? Do you feel uncomfortable or awkward when you're asking for the sale? On this video, you're going to learn a step-by-step framework that I've used to sell a range of health services, from physiotherapy, personal training, to health retreats and speaking seminars. My name's Phil. I've been a health entrepreneur for the last 10 years, and I've developed this framework because I want to help you sell with trust and transparency. Now let's address what you might all be thinking. If it's good, why give it away for free? Well, I operate based off a freemium model where I believe as long as I give enough good value to people for free, a select few will buy my courses and services. And if you want to learn more about those, you can check the description box below. 2. One of my key drivers in life is to leave something of timeless value behind. That's why everything you're going to learn in this framework will help you today, will help you in a week, and will help you in a year's time. Now that you know exactly what I'm doing, let's get into it. When I first left university, nobody taught me how important it was to learn how to sell my services. Because as you know, in the world of academia, we love our research, we love our evidence, but our patients, the people we actually serve, they don't know anything about the evidence, nor do many of them even care. What they really want is to trust that the person in front of them knows what they're doing and is able to help them get to where they are now, to where they want to be. The problem was, everywhere I looked for sales training was too wolf-like. You know what I'm talking about. It's deceptive, it's pushy, and it's high pressure. Now, as a health professional, we didn't get into the field to use these deceptive and sleazy sales tactics because we want to genuinely help people. In fact, I believe that any industry, whether you're in health, whether you're in accounting, it could be anything. If you sell based off deceptive sales tactics, in the long run, you are not going to have a business. And for us, being trustworthy is the key to delivering not only good treatment programs, but also a thriving business. That's why I developed this framework, because I took everything that I didn't want to do and I used the opposite tactic. So instead of being deceptive, pushy, and high pressure, the trust-based sales framework is open, transparent, and guiding. The relationship with your client or patient is more important than any money that you're going to make. And why is this? Because as your patients trust you more, the treatment plan actually becomes more effective. Patients who trust you more actually stick to the exercise plan that you give them. And because they're able to stick to the plan, their outcomes actually improve. There's been so many times that I've met great technical clinicians who can't actually get a lot of their patients better because they're not very good at communicating and building trust with that person. On the other hand, I've met good clinicians who aren't as textbook heavy, but they're able to get a lot of their patients better and be fully booked because they're so good at communicating and building trust with the person in front of them. Lastly, from a business perspective, higher trust with your patients now means in the future, they're going to come back if they have other problems. Higher trust now means they're going to refer their network to you. And higher price now means they're going to be open to paying you higher prices because they trust that what you're going to deliver is right for them. If you're struggling with sales because you have a mindset or belief problem when it comes to sales, then I'll make a video for you later on. But on this video, we're going to purely focus on the technical aspects of communication and selling. The goal of this framework is to build trust from the moment they meet you to what I call the likely buying point. Each step is designed to maximize trust, so when you do pitch your offer, the sale is a natural conclusion. Now there are 7 steps in this framework. Step 1, meet, greet, and acknowledge. Step 2, identify their problems. Step 3, demonstrate your understanding. Step 4, create a meaningful change. Step 5, clarify the roadmap to success. 6, close the deal. Step 7 is objection handling. The first step of the trust-based framework is to meet, greet, and acknowledge. Guys, you have 5 seconds to make your best first impression. And why that's important is because the first 5 seconds actually lays the foundation for the next 40 minutes to 50 minutes to even the entirety of your working relationship. And that's why it's really important that you learn the next 3 things I'm going to teach you about maximizing the first 5 seconds of your consult. Tactic number 1, This is by far the most timeless technique that you can use in any part of your service, and in fact in your personal life as well, to instantly gain rapport with somebody without being disingenuous. And that is to simply use their first name. Now, when you use the first name, there's plenty of research that shows in a crowded room, if you just say someone's first name, they're more likely to turn their heads. For the context of this video, the actual research isn't that important because the best research you're going to do is actually doing it for yourself. So after you see this part, for the remainder of your day, if you see your friends, if you see a new person, make sure you use their first name and see exactly how they respond to you. A quick tip that I will also give you with this tactic is you make sure that the person in front of you is around your age. If they're probably a little bit older, like 20 to 30 years, which you can tell from either their date of birth form, or you can just tell visually that they're a lot older than you, then it's best to use their surname. So for example, if I was 30 years older than you, you might refer to me as Mr. Liao. And why that's important is because there's always an appreciation when an older person meets a younger person and the younger person addresses them with the respect. Another reason why that's important is because culturally, if they grew up in the 50s or the 60s, these people are more formal by nature because it's only been the last couple of decades where things became less formal. Tip number 2, and again, this is timeless, you can use this in any part of your life, is to really pay attention to your body when you meet somebody. And what I mean by body is your body position. So if you're doing man to man, most men actually become quite uncomfortable when you approach them like this. Okay, front on, dead center. It's awkward, doesn't feel very good. And if you're a guy, you would have experienced this before where when you stand in front of someone like this, it almost feels confrontational, like you want to fight. So if you're doing a man-to-man consult, you might want to adjust your body like this. So you're a little bit more side on and extend your hand for a handshake. Now, even from you watching this video right now, if you're a man, you will feel this position is probably a little bit more comfortable versus if I was front on with you in this position. For man to woman. Now this is where the sexes becomes really important because there are still some conservative cultures where man to woman touch is frowned upon. Now to be safe, I personally don't like to handshake with women in a clinic or in a business setting because I don't know what their conservative culture is. So instead, I like to put my hand on my chest like this and politely bow to the woman in front of me. Now, if you want to do a handshake, that's fine as well, especially if you're in a Western country. So I live in Australia, I'm from Sydney, and that seems to be okay with most people. But if you meet a woman who has a hijab on, or you know she's a Muslim, it might be best for you to just put your hand on your chest like this and bow very politely. Now, if it's woman to man, you're the female therapist, then it doesn't seem to matter whether you stand like this or whether you stand like this to another man. So woman to man, it doesn't matter too much. And also woman to woman, it doesn't matter too much either. So make sure that you are cautious of your body position, especially if you're a man. If you're a woman, you still have to be cautious in terms of not being rude, like making sure that you're either front on or side on slightly, but you're still looking at your patient. The worst thing to do is to turn your back to them like this and look over your shoulder because that communicates a lack of interest and respect for the person in front of you. And my third tip, my third timeless tip, is to use the gift of gratitude. Now, the best way for me to explain this is actually in reverse. Let me ask you a question. How do you feel when your patient or somebody you've helped graciously expresses their gratitude for what you've done to them? It feels pretty good, right? How do you feel when you walk into, say, a Japanese restaurant and the whole place stops and says, "Konnichiwa," or "Ohayo" to make sure they welcome you into the restaurant? Feels pretty good, right? The power of being grateful for somebody's presence actually makes the person receiving it feel great. They feel like they can trust you and they feel welcome. So when your patient walks in and they're in the waiting room or your client is in the waiting room and you walk up to them, one of the first things you need to make them feel is your gratitude for their presence. Now, this makes a huge difference as to their first impression of you because now they feel like you are welcoming them. So remember, the feeling you're trying to give somebody is the feeling you get when somebody thanks you for doing things for them, or when you walk into a Japanese restaurant and the entire restaurant stops and says hello. So the easiest way for you to do this is just to say, "Hey, name, thank you so much for coming in today. If I was to do it to myself, I'd walk up to myself and I'd say, hey Phil, thanks so much for coming in today. And I would genuinely express that from the bottom of my heart. As part of gratitude, you could also give them an upfront gift. So there are many places where when you walk into their establishment, they will give you a free bottle of water, for example. And this bottle of water will cost them nothing. But the effect on your perception of whether you trust them, on whether you feel welcome, is 10 times more than the 20 cents that they'll spend on that bottle of water. Now let's put this all together to show you how it might look in the first 5 seconds and how I might sound. So for the first example, it'll be man to man. It's myself to myself. Hey Phil, my name's Phil. Thank you so much for coming in today. And that's it. That's all you have to do. If I was to do this with a woman, let's just say her name is Nancy, I'd walk up to her, but this time I'd be more front on and I'd say, hey Nancy, my name's Phil. Thank you so much for coming in today. That's it. That's as simple as it gets. But the way you do it, those first 5 seconds, it is going to set the tone for exactly how they might feel in the next 40 to 45 minutes of their consult. If you get this right, I guarantee you that all your consults will feel smoother. You'll feel like your patients open up to you more. And for you, you'll feel much more comfortable going through your entire assessment process. So the next part of the trust-based framework is to identify their problems. Most of you think that your patients will come to see you for one problem. But the truth is, your patients come to see you because they have 2 to 3 problems, even if they're not aware of what those are. Your job is to help them self-identify what these problems are. And there are 3 broad problems that you're going to address. The 3 problems are the practical problem, the emotional problem, and the thought problem. Let's go through what these are now. In the practical problem, this is the thing that they come to see you for. So for example, if you're a personal trainer and your client comes to see you because they want to learn how to lose weight, their practical problem is they don't know how to eat properly and they don't know how to train properly. If you're a physiotherapist and they come to see you for ankle rehab, their practical problem is they don't know what ankle rehab looks like, they don't know their diagnosis, and they don't know what exercises to do. In other fields, let's just say you're not in health, let's just say you're a mortgage broker. A client will come to see you because they want to learn more about borrowing and they want to learn whether they're able to buy a house. Now, when you identify a practical problem, most of us can see it from a mile away. But it's not about what we see, it's about helping them see what we see. So the technique I'm going to teach you is called the bait and the switch. Whatever problem they're facing practically, all you have to do is turn that problem statement into a problem question. For example, if somebody is coming to see me for weight loss and I know that they don't know enough about protein targets, I'm not going to say, you don't know enough about protein targets. I'm going to say, how much do you know about protein targets? Similarly, if I was to work with somebody who had chronic back pain and I identified that their hips have something to do with it, I might say to them, how much do you know about your hip joint in relation to back pain? Now, the reason why we do this is because you want to give them the chance to say, I don't know. And if they say, I don't know, then you've clearly established that there's a knowledge gap between you, the professional, and them. The second reason why you might want to do this is because it gives them the opportunity to tell you what they know. Most people love to talk about what they know, but not only that, it saves you, the service provider, time, because if they already know exactly what you want them to know, then you can skip ahead to the next part. I know it's going to feel unnatural in the very beginning, but trust me, if you get good at doing this, you'll see your conversations begin to open up, you'll build better rapport with your patients, and you'll make your consults much, much smoother. The second broad problem that you're going to want to address is their emotional problem. Most people who come to see you for their problems, they're not actually struggling with the practical problem. They're struggling with the way the practical problem makes them feel. For example, if you have somebody who's struggling with chronic lower back pain, they're here to see you because they don't like being in pain anymore. They're anxious and they're scared. It's not purely because my back's not moving properly, it's because of a way they feel. Similarly, if you have somebody who comes to see you for physique purposes, they want to look better, it's not because they don't know how to train or they don't know how to eat. It's because deep down they don't feel good enough or they don't like who they are, and that's why they're here to see you for help. But the issue with emotional issues is we can't really ask them with a bait and switch technique because you don't know whether they're here to see you for that. Unless you're a psychologist, most people aren't there to talk about their feelings. So instead, what you want to do is use a technique called labeling. Now, labeling is very simple. You listen to the emotion behind their problems and you simply bring it out to the surface. For example, if somebody says to me, "Hey Phil, my back really hurts, I can't sleep, it's really bothering me," I can hear that they're anxious and they're frustrated. So I'm just going to say, "Hey, that sounds quite frustrating and like an anxious time." Now, what usually happens when you label correctly is your patient will start to open up. They will say even more about how they're feeling. And why that's important is, as you'll see in the next part of the framework, it's really important that your patients understand that you understand exactly what you're doing. And the third broad problem that you're going to want to address is the thought problem. Now, the thought problems are actually tied very closely to the emotional problem because what you think causes what you feel, and sometimes what you feel causes what you think. Now, you're going to use the exact same technique of labeling. Except with thought, you're going to bring out things that you think they're going to be thinking already. This ties back to your own clinical experience. How much do you know about the thought patterns of these particular patients? For example, if I have somebody going through short-term back pain, some thoughts they might be going through is, how much can I bend over? Is bending over going to hurt my back? How long is this rehab process going to take? So the way I would bring that out in a consult is I would simply just say, yeah, the problem with back pain is you don't know what you're going to be doing next week. You don't know how much you can bend over. You don't know how long it's going to take, which makes it a frustrating issue to deal with. Now, can you see that if I was to say that to you, if you're going through back pain, you would actually look at me and think, oh wow, this person knows what he's talking about. To give you another example, let's just use physique again. If somebody wants to lose weight and they're on YouTube looking at all these videos and everyone says something different, I know one of the things that they might be thinking is, who do I trust? What's right? What's wrong? I'm so confused. So the way I would bring that out is I would just say, yeah, and the hard part about losing weight now is if you go on YouTube or Google, there are a million videos that tell you all different things about what works and what doesn't work. And it becomes so frustrating and confusing. Can you see that if I was to say that to you, first time meeting me, and you're going through those thoughts, you would think to yourself, oh wow, Phil gets it. He knows exactly what I'm thinking and going through. Last example I could give you, which has no relationship to the health field whatsoever, is maybe buying a house. Let's just say you're looking for a new home, and some of the thoughts you'd be going through is this worth it? Is this going to go up in price? Is this house's foundations going to be faulty? So the way I would label that is, the challenge for first home buyers is they're always thinking about whether this house is going to go up in value, whether this foundation is set properly. As long as you do your homework and you know these thoughts that are going through and you mention them during the consultation, the person in front of you will be able to understand that there's several problems that they're dealing with. And it'll set you up for addressing those problems and building trust along the way. Part 3 of the trust-based framework is to demonstrate your understanding. At this point in your consult or assessment, you're still going through the problem exploring stage. To demonstrate understanding, I want you guys to remember to the first time you took a driving test. Now, I remember what happened for me. To check my blind spot, I had to do this. I had to be so dramatic with my blind spot check because the examiner needed to see that I was doing the movement. Now, for example, if I had just done a small movement like this, maybe he would have noticed it, but for him to pass me, he needed to see a very obvious action that I'd done it. So that's why I'd have to do this. In the same way, when you're going through the consult and you're trying to understand your patient's problems, you have to make it obvious that you completely understand what they're going through. And there are 2 ways that I like to do this. The first way is by paraphrasing. Paraphrasing is repeating what they've said back to them. But in order to paraphrase well, you want to do it concisely, in the correct sequence of events, and also with the emotion attached. For example, if I was to paraphrase someone's lower back pain problem, I would say something like this. Okay, so 2 days ago, you bent over to pick up a toy for your kid and you felt a pop in your back. And then you went to sit down, and as you sat down, you didn't feel anything. But after a couple of hours, that's when you started to feel something. And now it's been 2 days, you can't really bend over properly, And it's frustrating because you haven't been able to do the things that you normally do at home. Is that correct? Another example that might be helpful is something as simple as relationships. Let's just say your friend is going through a relationship problem and they're whinging about their boyfriend. So to paraphrase, I might say something like, okay, so a few days ago, you and your boyfriend had a fight because you were trying to take out the trash and your boyfriend wasn't helping, and you got angry because he hasn't been helping around the house for the last few days. And so you yelled at him, and then he retaliated by leaving the house and not speaking to you for 4 to 5 hours. And now you're upset. Is that right? As long as you paraphrase correctly, the impact of what you've done is you help the person in front of you feel heard. And when somebody feels heard, they are going to trust you. So the second technique you're going to use is predictive labeling. Now, how this is different to labeling is labeling you do with the present. You do it with what they're feeling and what thoughts they might have. Predictive labeling is when you know the thoughts that they're going to have or the emotions they're going to have, and you bring that into the forefront so that they think, oh, yeah, I didn't even think about that. For example, if I have somebody who wants to lose weight, in the beginning, they're thinking about what do I eat, what do I train, what do I need to know. But I know 6 months down the track, they're going to think, how do I keep it off? How do I sustain what I'm doing? Do I still need somebody to guide me? And so I'm going to bring those thoughts into the forefront and say something like this. After you have lost a few kilos, after you've learned how to train a bit more, the next question you have to ask yourself is, how am I going to keep the weight off? How am I going to sustain the habits that I have currently? And that becomes the next challenge. And usually when you say something that's true, but they haven't thought of yet, they'll say, oh yeah, no, I haven't really thought about that. You're able to get that statement, you're in. So to recap, if you really want to demonstrate understanding to your patient, you are going to paraphrase really, really well. And 2, you're also going to get good at predictive labeling. Now let's move on to step 4, which is make a meaningful change. Now the fourth part of the trust-based framework is to create a meaningful change. This is arguably the most powerful trust-building step of the entire process. The goal of this part is to show that you can create an instantaneous change to the current problem that they have. When you're able to help them with a problem almost immediately, internally they will feel that they can trust you more because you've just demonstrated your expertise. Do you remember that time you went into a restaurant and the owner gave you a water or a can of Coke without you even asking for it because they saw that you looked really thirsty or that it was a hot day? Chances are you left a tip, you ordered more, or you've been a repeat customer because you really trusted them and you enjoyed interaction that you had together. That is exactly what you are trying to achieve when you go for meaningful change. Now remember, when you're going for meaningful change, you're doing it out of the goodness of your heart as a professional. If you do it with the intention of getting them to buy your products or services, usually they can feel that it comes at a price. So get into the habit of trying to solve these problems, not because you want them to buy, but because you genuinely just want to help them. I used to get questions all the time at the gym. A very simple one is, how do I do a back squat properly? And I would use this question as an opportunity to provide meaningful change for them. So I would take them right then and there to go through some ankle mobility drills, maybe some back drills, maybe how to put the bar on their traps. I did all these things because I wanted them to be able to back squat because it's a great exercise and it's going to get them great results. Similarly, when I was a physiotherapist, I used to go to weightlifting competitions and I would set up a little table to provide 15 to 20-minute consults so weightlifters could come in, get quick treatment and go compete. During that time, I would build a relationship with them and give them education on how to be a better competitor, manage their injuries, and if they suited, I would ask them whether they would want to come in to see me at the clinic. Because I knew that as long as I gave them value, even if they don't buy now, maybe later on down the track, they will. Now you might be wondering, should I be aiming to do this before I take their payment or after I take their payment? It really depends on the profession that you're in. If you're an allied health professional like physiotherapist, exercise physiologist, dietitian, or psychologist, then there's an expectation that you're going to take payment after the initial consult. So you make sure that you provide meaningful change before you pitch your treatment plans. And you do this because the long-term treatment plan in itself is a pitch. If you're in a different field, like you're a personal trainer, strength and conditioning coach, or you're a mindset coach, your initial consultation usually isn't charged. So that in itself is a selling process. And that's why you want to create meaningful change before you pitch your payment options. Now, there are multiple ways to create meaningful change. Well, how would I know that it's meaningful for them? For me, it's quite simple. You just ask. During your consultation, from steps 1 to 3, you should at some stage have asked them, what are you here to see me for? What can I help you most with? And using what they've told you, you want to solve any subset of problems within that sphere. For example, if I have a weight loss client and they've come to see me purely because they want to lose weight, then one thing I might leave them with is dietary advice or education, or a pre-made pamphlet that shows them the basics of macronutrient breakdown. If I have a back pain patient who wants to be moving pain-free, then within the consult, I will do pain management techniques so that they know they can move pain-free again. If you're in something completely different like mindset coaching, then you want to be able to give them mindset exercises that they can do right then and there that will help them alleviate their problem. If you don't have anything that's immediate that you can provide them physically or from a knowledge base, then another thing you can do is just to reassure them or to provide a map of what they're going to get. For example, if I have a patient in chronic lower back pain, I can show them a 12-week plan that will take them from where they are now to where they want to be. And that's important because sometimes people aren't looking for an immediate change, but what they do want is a way out, which is what the plan is. So I really can't stress this enough. This part of your consult is where you demonstrate your expertise and you show them that you can definitively help them. If you don't feel like you can do this yet, then you need to improve your skills as a professional. Because if you can't help them, but you still sell, then you become unethical, then you become untrustworthy, which is not what we want in this field. Now, if you're not pressed for time, you might even solve more than one problem for them in that consult. Because the more problems you're able to solve in a short amount of time, the more trust you're able to bank with this person. So when you do pitch your payment options or when you do pitch your plans, they are more than likely to convert to a paying customer. One of the objections you might have for me right now is, well, if I give them everything, how am I going to help them? And my answer to you is, if you give away everything within 30 to 40 minutes of your consultation, you probably don't know enough. There are so many problems to solve for your patient. As I've shown you in step 2, every patient comes with at least 3 problems, that it is impossible for you to give them everything that you know in the 40 to 45 to even 60 minutes. Remember, don't be stingy with your knowledge. You'll thank yourself after. Now let's move on to step 5. Step 5 is all about clarifying the roadmaps to success. This is the climax of your assessment or consultation, because it is this part where your patient will step over the line into becoming a paying customer, or they decide to walk away and try something else. By now, you have built trust and connected with the patient, and you've shown them that you can help them with their problem. The goal of this step is to show them very clearly how many steps it's going to take to get to their goal. At the very least, you want to outline at least 2 things that they're going to need to know in order to get to where they want to be. For example, if I have a client who wants to lose 10 kilos, I might say, look, it'll be safe to lose 2 kilos a month. Over 5 months, if you see me 3 times a week with some dietary changes, you're going to get there. But wait, there's more. I don't just want to stop at one option. I want to give them at least 3. So I've just given them 1. The next thing I might say is, look, if you want to be a bit more aggressive because you need to lose this quickly, we can push it to 3 kilos a month, which means you'll have to see me at least 4 times a week. Plus you have to be very strict with your sleep and your nutrition because you're more likely to get injured if you don't take care of those things. And that'll take you roughly 2.5 to maybe 3 months. And the last option is, if you're happy to do this slow and you want to do it long term, like 1 kilo per month, then it'll take you 10 months. You train with me twice a week, you'll have to make dietary changes, but this will be more of a lifestyle change and you'll be able to sustain this for much longer because you've taken a longer time to get there. My question to you now is, why is it beneficial to give them 3 options and not just to tell them 1? Let me give you an example that you may have come across. Let's just say you go to a phone store and you want to buy some phones. Show you the iPhone, the Samsung, and maybe the Google phone. And then they tell you all the features of each phone and why they're going to be good for your needs. And at the end, they simply ask you, hey, so which one do you like the most? You pick the one that you like the most, right? Psychologically, the benefit of giving somebody options is you give them the opportunity to buy. There's an old saying in sales which is, people don't like to be sold, but people love to buy. By giving them options, you create the illusion of choice, or just choice. And whatever they pick, generally speaking, if you've done your job educating them, it's going to be the best solution for them. And the beautiful thing is, this doesn't just work in health. This works in every field. Now, you do have to be creative to adapt this type of framework towards whatever profession you're in. For example, as a physiotherapist, I might say something like this for an acute ankle sprain. We have three main options for rehabilitating your ankle. The first option is for you to come to see me 3 times a week for the first 2 weeks, and then we reassess you at the end of week 2. Now, this suits workers and athletes who need to get back on their feet as soon as possible. The second option is to see us twice a week in the first 2 weeks, followed by a reassessment at the end of week 2. Now, this suits everyday people who would like to get it right the first time, but they're not as urgent so they can afford to not come in as many times. And the third option, which isn't the most popular, but is suitable for people who live far away, or they're just so time poor that they come in once a week for the first 2 weeks, and then we reassess at the end of 2 weeks. Now, out of these three, which one suits you best? Can you see how by listing the options, how people would receive this would be very different? Now, I know this might feel uncomfortable or strange to you if you're doing this for the first time, but I promise you that with practice, you will become better and you'll see your conversions go higher and higher without friction. And the last, most important reason why we pitch options is because it's going to help you with the next stage, which is to close the deal. Step 6 is the close. So now you've pitched your plan and you're wondering, well, how do I go from pitching the plan to them making payment? A lot of professionals actually choke up here because they get nervous about telling their patient or their client what to do. The answer is you don't have to tell them anything. You just ask. Because after you've pitched the 3 pathways, you ask them, okay, out of these 3, which one suits you best? Which one suits you best? They can only answer whichever one suits them best out of those 3. Once they pick their option, book them in for the next appointment. So, okay, we'll go with this option over here. Let's start on this date. Does that work for you? They'll say yes. Okay, would that be by cash or card? Or if you've negotiated a payment plan, then what date would you like that payment plan to start? The reason that close works is because implicitly you're asking them to pay. As you can see, closing is very, very easy if you set it up properly. The mistake most professionals make is they don't spend enough time in the first 5 steps educating and giving value. And then at the end, they feel like they can just ask somebody to make payment. But the reality is, unless you've done the first 5 steps well, no one's going to want to give their money to you because there's no trust. You haven't shown that you can help them. So why would they want to give you any money? Sometimes, although rarely, you will get people who say, all 3 options don't really work for me. This is when you enter the objection handling and negotiation stage of this framework. When somebody gives you an objection, most people almost freeze because they either feel insulted or they feel shy or they feel embarrassed that the person in front of them has said no. But I want you to remember that an objection is not a bad thing because an objection usually means that they're ready to buy as long as you solve the problem that they're giving you. That's why whenever you get into negotiation or objection handling, you have to remember it's not you versus them. It's how do we work together to solve this problem so that you can get toward the end goal, which is to work together. If somebody says no to your product and has no objection, that means they're not interested in your products or services at all. And that's the worst thing you can get. If you have resistance, you've got a potential buyer. There are actually many, many ways to handle an objection. So I'm not going to teach you specific scripts to use. Instead, I'm going to give you the framework that I use that you can adapt towards your practice. This is called the VIP framework. The V stands for validate, the I stands for isolate, and the P stands for present or probe. When you validate a customer, when they tell you their objection, which could be, it costs too much, it's too expensive, I have no time, it doesn't really matter what they say. What matters is you agree with them and you let them know that their concern is very legitimate. What this does is it lowers the internal resistance toward your offer. Now imagine this. You're being sold something, you want to buy a television, and you say to the salesperson, hey, it's just a little bit outside my budget range. And the salesperson immediately says to you, oh, but it's not expensive. How would you feel in here? A little bit insulted, a little bit offended because they haven't listened to what you've said. Instead, if I said to you, no, I totally get it. Every household has different financial needs. How different would it be for you to receive that from me as opposed to me telling you it's actually not expensive? The I stands for isolate. And what this means is you want to ask them whether that's the only problem that's holding them back. For example, if somebody says to you, hey, I just don't have enough time to commit to an exercise program. After you validate them, you say to them, okay, besides time, is there any reason why you can't move forward today? Most of the time, they'll say, no, there's no other reason. And then you can say, so as long as we solve the time issue, will you be happy to move forward? And they'll say yes. Then it leads you to P. Now, what's P? P is probe or present. Present means to provide a solution that's different from what you gave before. If somebody says to you, I have no time, and you said to them, okay, so let's work out something for time, and you rejig the program so that they don't spend as much time, say, with you, and they can spend more time being independent. If that works for them, then you've just solved their problem. Probe means you don't have enough information to actually give them a presentable solution. Now, this works best when they're being vague. For example, somebody says, let me think about it. Now, for you as a salesperson, this isn't enough information for you to provide them with more information or a better solution to help them. So I might ask, if you don't mind me asking, since I'm here anyway, what are you thinking about? And then they might tell you it's the cost, it's the time, it's whether the partner agrees, any of those things. And that's when you have to learn how to address those objections. Once you understand this framework and you know how to validate, isolate, present, or probe, the next thing you have to remember is with objections, you can only go two ways. Either you work with them and you change your offer, or you present new information to make the offer seem better than it did before. For example, if I have somebody who's negotiating with me on price, I might say to them, thanks for telling me, I understand that costing right now is actually a big issue. So if you don't mind me asking, besides the budget, is there anything else holding you back from moving forward today? And they'll say no. Then I'll say, okay, so if I can work out a budget that suits you, would you be happy to move forward? Yes. How much right now, ballpark wise, am I out of your budget by? And they'll say $30. Okay, so let's remove one session from the total 6 sessions. One session is $120, which means that I've given you a surplus of $90, which is well within your budget range now. Does that sound fair to you? And they'll say, yes, it does. And then you can move forward and take the payment. Now let's just say I can't negotiate on my offer because I'm working for someone, or I just don't want to reduce what I'm offering. Instead, I'll present new information. Using the same example as before, if somebody tells me that it's out of their budget by $20, I might say to them, I get it, it's just out of your budget right now. This is a short-term investment for a long-term return. Over the next 6 sessions, you're going to get X result. And as long as you keep up with these exercises, you're going to have the effects for years to come. Now, would $20 really be enough to hold you back from that? Would that be a bad investment? When I'm presenting new information, I almost try to think of them as my family. Because when I'm talking to my family, I don't think of the money side and I become more convincing. For example, when I convinced my mum to start doing more exercise, I didn't think about the money she would spend because she's my mum. I said to her, look, mum, you should be enjoying your later years pain-free, walking around. I don't want you to be limping. And the longer you leave this, the more likely you're going to be limping later on. So it's better you start now and just spend 20 to 30 minutes twice a week strengthening your legs than to wait until you're 70 or 75 when your muscle starts to waste away. And using that approach, she actually ended up doing more exercise. Now, whether you decide to go with it or to hold your ground and present new information is completely dependent on you and what your business is able to offer. Personally, I use the collaborative go with it approach most of the time, but there are days when I can't move anything in my offer, so I will try and present more information. It's up to you, but get into the habit of at least trying to problem solve whenever an objection comes up. You won't be able to get through them all, you won't be able to convert them all, but the ones that you do, those are the ones that really count because that could be one extra life you've helped. And last of all, remember, objection handling is a team effort. It is not you against them, it is us together. To summarize, the 7 steps of the trust-based framework are: step 1, meet, greet, and acknowledge. You maximize the first 5 seconds. 2, identify their problems, and this is where you help them see what their problems are. Step 3, demonstrate your understanding. This is where you show them you understand their problem, maybe even better than they do. Step 4, create a meaningful change. Show them that you're an expert that can make an immediate impact. Step 5, clarify your road maps. This is where you present your options, so you give them the opportunity to choose. Step 6, close. This is where you ask them what they want to do. And step 7 is objection handling, where you go through problem solving together. Remember, as a health professional, why you got into this job. You got into this job because you wanted to help people. You don't have to be pushy. You don't have to be sleazy. In fact, you can make money as a health professional and help people in an open and transparent way. Using this framework, I'm confident that you will be able to help more people in a way that feels right to you and build more trust within our industry. Now that you've reached the last part of this video, I do have one small favor to ask of you. Please share this with one other health professional, because the only way we can put trust back into this industry is by doing it together. I hope that you'll revisit this video every few years, and you can also use this to help your future team members that you're going to employ and help. My name's Phil. Thank you very much. See you on the next video.